Hello, and welcome back to Everything Travel and Health. A special thanks to you for stopping by. Thanks for subscribing and liking our videos. We shall strive to continue to give you the best content to help you achieve your dream of moving abroad. I have received several comments from my subscribers and viewers requesting that I discuss the process of working in Canada as an internationally educated midwife. So, in this video, I have decided to do justice to that topic. So, stay with me. Globally, there is a shortage of healthcare manpower. This shortage also extends to the midwifery profession. As a result, there is a great need for the recruitment of midwives into the health sector. Midwives are therefore needed from various parts of the world to fill these vacant positions. Midwifery is a highly regulated profession, and just like nursing, each province in Canada has its own regulatory body. In some provinces, nursing and midwifery have the same regulatory body, while in others, they are different. To be able to practice in any of these provinces as an internationally educated midwife, you must first be registered with one of these regulatory bodies. These regulatory bodies ensure that families working with midwives in Canada can expect safe and effective care during pregnancy, birth, and the first 6 to 8 weeks postpartum. So, if you're an internationally educated midwife, IEM, who wants to practice midwifery in Canada, then this video contains all the information on how to become eligible and meet the requirements to apply for registration with any of the midwifery regulatory bodies in Canada. It contains a step-by-step guide on how to register and become licensed to practice in Canada. Ensure you watch this video to the end, so as to fully understand the process and be able to navigate your way through. If you have not yet subscribed to this channel, please do so to be able to enjoy more of our upcoming informative and educational content. Click the notification bell to be informed of our future uploads. Without much ado, let's go right into the discussion. As I mentioned earlier, you must be registered and licensed by one of the midwifery regulatory bodies in any of the provinces to be able to practice midwifery in Canada. Now, let's see what it takes to be registered with these bodies. It is important to note that all the provinces of Canada have the same basic requirements, with only a few slight additional requirements or modifications. However, in this video, I shall be discussing the basic requirements needed to register with these regulatory bodies, and specifically, I shall be using British Columbia as an example. This means that what I will be discussing in this video will help you get registered as a midwife in British Columbia. To be registered with the British Columbia College of Nurses and Midwives, you must first complete the Internationally Educated Midwives Bridging Program, IEMBP, at the University of British Columbia in British Columbia. Internationally educated midwives who successfully complete the BCCNM's Bridging Program, IEMBP, in British Columbia will be deemed to have equivalency to the qualifications of a British Columbia Midwifery Education Program graduate and be eligible to write the Canadian Midwifery Registration Exam, CRME, enabling IEMs to apply for registration with the college to practice in British Columbia. Now, let's talk about the Internationally Educated Midwives Bridging Program. The Internationally Educated Midwives Bridging Program, IEMBP, is aimed at increasing diversity and expertise within the midwifery workforce in British Columbia. It is an 8 to 10 month orientation program that provides a means by which internationally trained midwives can become registered for practice within British Columbia. The IEMBP is an orientation program, not an education program. To be enrolled in this program, applicants must have completed a recognized midwifery education program, or be assessed on significant midwifery experience if their education cannot be verified or approved. Only those who have undergone a midwifery education program can apply to the IEMBP. The IEMBP prepares candidates to take the provincial and national midwifery exams, which, when passed, allow applicants to submit their application for registration as a midwife in British Columbia with the College of Midwives of British Columbia, CMBC. So, what are the eligibility requirements for the IEMBP? To be eligible for the Internationally Educated Midwives Bridging Program, you must meet the following criteria. 1. You must have graduated from a recognized midwifery education program offered by an accredited educational institution. This can either be a diploma, bachelor's degree, or post-nursing degree program. The program must consist of a minimum of 24 months of full-time midwifery education, or at least 2,400 clinical hours and 850 academic hours over a minimum of 18 months of midwifery education, or a minimum of 1 academic year of full-time post-nursing or post-naturopathic midwifery education. 2. Must have educational credential assessment done by either the World Education Services, Canada, WES, or the International Credential Evaluation Service, ICES. You must request that a copy of your course by course evaluation report be sent to the IEMBP office. 3. You must have registered with a regulatory organization or government department that has authority to govern the profession, keeps a register of midwives, and regulates the standards and practice of midwifery. And you have had good professional conduct during your career, which can be proven by a certificate of good conduct or equivalent from a regulatory organization or government department. 4. You must have actively practiced midwifery for at least 5 out of the last 10 years while registered with a midwifery regulatory organization, or have completed a midwifery education program within the last 5 years and have met the 100 primary birth requirements of all applicants through education and experience prior to your submission of application to the IEMBP. The clinical experience that is acceptable must include a minimum of 100 births as primary midwife during the last 10 years. And education or experience in antenatal, interpartum, postpartum, and newborn care from the perspective of a midwife providing evidence-based care on her own responsibility. Postpartum care must have been provided beyond the first 24 hours after birth up to a minimum of 2 weeks postpartum as a part of your education and/or experience. 5. You will be required to meet English language competency. Hence, you are required to provide proof by submitting approved English language proficiency test scores, such as ielts. You are expected to provide an overall score of 7.0 with a minimum of 7.0 for each component. However, some applicants can get exemptions from the English language test, and they include those who have lived in an approved country where English is the first language for 4 of the 6 years immediately prior to finalization of the IEMBP application, and have completed a midwifery education program of at least 24 months duration in a country where English is the first language, where the language of instruction and examination was in English, and where a minimum of 80% of clinical experience, including patient interactions, took place in English. Or you have lived in an approved country where English is the first language for 4 of the 6 years immediately prior to the finalization of the IEMBP application, and Have lived and studied in a country where English is the first language and studied in English-only schools for at least 4 years in a secondary and/or post-secondary institution. English is only considered a first language when it is the language learned at home in childhood, the language the individual identifies as knowing best and being most comfortable with, and the language primarily used for reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Now, let's discuss the application process. When you meet the mentioned criteria, you can register for the program. To register for the program, there is a link in the description box of this video. You will be asked to create an account. After creating an account, you will be directed to a page where you have to provide details of your personal information, including information about your English language proficiency, midwifery education, registration, and practice. You will be required to download certain forms, which you have to use to provide evidence for your midwifery education, clinical experience or practice, and registration. They are labeled Forms A to E. There are 2 ways you are expected to provide evidence of your education and clinical experience. You are to choose one of them. However, the first option is advisable and recommended. The first option requires the provision of an educational credential assessment report from WES, which must be submitted directly from WES, and the use of Forms A and D only. You will need to submit 2 copies of Form D. Form A requests for information about midwifery education. You will complete Part 1 of the form and send it to your midwifery program head or other relevant official from your educational institution. This form will outline your midwifery education, program description, hours of clinical and theoretical studies, graduation requirements, and dates/locations of your clinical placements. Form D is called the Professional Reference and Clinical Experience Confirmation Form. You are required to have submitted 2 D forms from 2 separate referees with your application. You will complete Part 1 of the form and send it to your selected referees to complete Part 2 and 3. Your referees are also expected to sign the back of your passport-style photo to confirm your identity. This form confirms your professional standing and also verifies clinical births in which they have seen you act as primary midwife or from which they have access to related records for proof. The use of Form C is optional. It is called Request for Verification of Midwifery Clinical Experience. If your verified birth numbers as a primary midwife from your educational institution and 2 referees, D forms, do not show proof of the minimum 100 births required of all IEMBP applicants, you can also submit a C form to a colleague, supervisor, or other qualified person who has observed your clinical work or has access to official records. You will complete Part 1 of the form and send it to your selected referees to complete Part 2. All completed forms must be sent directly from the qualified source to the IEMBP office. Form B is only necessary if you plan to use Option 2, which is not advisable and not covered in this video, because it requires competency testing in Vancouver. Form E is needed if your documents are not in English and need to be translated into English. Additionally, you have to complete and submit a notarization form. You are required to print, sign with a notary public or lawyer, and mail it to the IEMBP office to complete your application. After you have submitted your application as well as all the references and verification documents, your application will be assessed. If you meet the criteria, you will be accepted into the program. With the program acceptance letter, you can then apply for a study co-op work permit. This implies that you can work while undergoing the program. Now, let's discuss the cost of the program. As I mentioned earlier, the program is split into 3 terms. The tuition fees for the program are also split into 3. All applicants must submit payment for their application assessment upon completion of their IEMBP application. The application fee is $500. This one-time application fee is non-refundable. The tuition fees for the first term is $1,235, for the second term, it is $4,400 and the third term fees is $3,865. This brings the total cost of the program to $10,000. All the fees are in Canadian dollars. This is quite affordable, especially bearing in mind that you will be allowed to work during the period of the program. The IEMBP is offered twice a year. Admission into the program occurs twice in a year. There are October and January intakes. Application files are assessed on an ongoing basis. For consideration for October intake, application forms must be submitted as complete files no later than May 1st, and for January intake no later than July 1st. On successful completion of the IEMBP program, you will then be able to take the Canadian Midwifery Regulators Examination, CMRE, in spring or fall of the program year. When you pass the CMRE exam, you will be registered as a midwife in British Columbia with the College of Midwives of British Columbia, CMBC. As a registered midwife, you can secure a job and start working as a midwife. That is all that is involved. So, if you are a midwife and you are considering moving to work in Canada, then start planning today. Thanks for watching. Do not forget to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed watching, and ensure you subscribe and share with friends and family. Also, hit the notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. See you in my next video.